Good evening, I'm Marty Olson and welcome to another edition of City Focus. And as you all know, every week I have a special guest, but this week I really am honored to have, I think, an extraordinarily special guest, a professional in every sense of the word. I have a member of the United States Coast Guard Band, and they are pros, and I'd like to introduce to everybody Senior Chief Musician Heather Dowdy, plays the horn.
That's correct.
French horn specifically, correct?
That's correct.
And has been a member of the U.S. Coast Guard Band since 1999 and is currently the band's chief scheduler. She's previously served as the chief music librarian for 9 years. And before entering the band, attended Ithaca College, where she earned a Bachelor of Music degree in horn performance, and the Ohio State University, where she earned a Master's of Music degree also in horn performance. During her time in the band, she's performed in a variety of roles within the horn section, including principal for several years, and currently serves as second horn and section leader. And when not working and performing with the band, Heather enjoys teaching horn students of all ages. So some of you out there in the senior set that are looking to take up the horn, we've got the person right here for you. Over the years, these students have enjoyed great success, with many going on to careers in music. And she hopes one day that one of her students will take her place. Heather's principal teachers have been Ginger Culpepper, John Covert, Bill Bernadis, and Charles Waddle. In addition to music, she's into travel and taken around the globe, including all 50 states, and she enjoys spending time with her family, reading, and hiking. Heather, I want to welcome you to the program here.
Thank you.
We've got so much to talk about, and I'm really excited to have you on board, so welcome.
Thank you for having me.
And folks, again, as we are just about every week, we're live, and if you would like to contribute to the program, please call locally 860-440-3154. And if you're out of the local calling area, please dial 800-253-2285. I think one thing that we should take up top is that there's a distinction between the Coast Guard Band and the United States Coast Guard Academy, because you're separate entities.
That's correct. So our home base is at the Coast Guard Academy. We are deemed a congressional premier service band, so similar to the President's Own or Pershing's Own, which are located down in Washington, D.C. But our home base is here at the United States Coast Guard Academy and has been since we started in 1925. So the difference between us and the Academy Band is that we are enlisted musicians in the Coast Guard. We are professional musicians, and we work for the Coast Guard as a promotion tool. We spread goodwill across the country, across the world, let people know about the Coast Guard story. The Coast Guard Academy Band is a music program for the cadets that are at the Academy studying to be future officers. So that's the big distinction.
Now, as a professional musician, how did you get there? I mean, are you from a musical family, and where are you from? I mean, let's take that path from a young girl to Ithaca to the Ohio State, and then back here to the Northeast.
So I grew up in New Hampshire, and my family is a musical family. My father was my band director from 4th grade until I graduated from high school. My godmother was a professional horn player early in her career, and she deemed when I was born that I would be a French horn player. And so she gave me a mouthpiece when I was 3, and I practiced on the mouthpiece. And when I was about 8 years old, she said she's ready to start horn lessons. So my godmother taught me horn lessons all through high school, middle school, and high school. During middle school and high school, I was encouraged that I go down to New England Conservatory in Boston and audition. They have a preparatory school, and they do orchestras and wind ensembles and chamber music on the weekends. And so I became involved with that program, in addition to auditioning for music festivals. When I was probably a junior in high school, I decided that I did want to pursue a career in music. And the path led me to Ithaca College. And then when I graduated, I didn't feel I was quite ready to go out and take auditions to be a performance major, so I went to Ohio State University and got some more training there and was able to start building my resume as a performer. I was also married at Ohio State University, which was great, and we wound up having our first child there after we graduated. So I kind of delayed my career a little bit, and after the birth of my first child, I started taking auditions, and Coast Guard Band was one of my first auditions, and it worked out for me to have that job.
Well, that's interesting how things kind of dovetailed nicely for you here.
That's right.
In that regard, how competitive is it to become a member of the Coast Guard Band? I mean, how many performers are in the band?
We have 55 musicians in the band. We have...
Is that a fixed number?
It is a fixed number, and 49 of those are playing musicians. We have one vocalist, and then we have conductors, and we have audio engineers. Each position is highly competitive. Depends upon which instrument it is, but most auditions we see at least 30 people coming to audition. We advertise the position nationally. We do that through the Union newspaper. We do that via our website and Facebook page. We do it online with groups called Musical Chairs. And we also send out an invitation to all of the college teachers of that specific instrument and invite their students to come and audition. So for an example, we had a bassoon audition last month. We had 28 people that came to the audition. We had 2 finalists from that, and one person was offered the job, and we learned earlier this week that he accepted that job. So he'll be now going through the enlistment process for the Coast Guard. So he's passed the musical requirements, and now he will pass the Coast Guard requirements for enlistment.
Now, enlisting in the Coast Guard and becoming a member of the Coast Guard Band, one then assumes or takes on the responsibility of being a member of the Coast Guard.
That's correct.
Hence the uniform and living to the rules and regulations of being a member of the service.
That's correct.
So you're not just a regular citizen anymore. You're a member of the Coast Guard.
Right. So part of the audition is also an interview process where we let people know, honestly, what it's like to be in military life, what it's like to be in the Coast Guard Band, some of the demands that are on us, the fact that we do wear a uniform, that we are subject to all of the uniform codes of military justice, those sorts of things. Our members do not go through boot camp, such as the other bands do, other military.
Really?
We do not, but we do have an indoctrination program. It's for 2 weeks at Cape May Training Center in Cape May, New Jersey. So our members go down there and they go through the indoctrination program and then come back up here and we finish their training up here on base.
And might that be because you're under the Department of Homeland Security or prior to that transportation as opposed to being Department of Defense?
That part of it, no. It's just the structure of who we are. It's actually similar to the Marine Band, the President's Own Marine Band. Those musicians also do not go through boot camp. They have an indoctrination program. So ours is modeled after theirs.
Okay. Now, discussing the level of competitiveness to become a member of the Coast Guard Band, for the benefit of our viewers, being able to perform at such a high level that you would be, and any of the other band members can be competing alternatively for, let's say, the Boston Symphony or the Boston Pops or the New York Philharmonic or any of the other higher end, for lack of better words, and I'm hardly a musician, so my terminology is probably not spot on here, but if you get my drift, that...
Right. We are looking for the most qualified musician that we can find. It's a very rigorous process. The beginning of the day is an audition behind a screen. A candidate could come up and play maybe 3 minutes of a solo work, maybe 4 excerpts that were pre-selected. And then, depending upon how they play, the committee that's listening to them behind the screen will deem whether they want to hear more from them. Sort of similar to, say, any of the talent shows that are on television, where there's an elimination process and a moving forward process. Some committees decide to have a semifinal round also behind a screen. We're only listening for musical qualities. That's all we're listening for. How well does somebody play in tune with themselves? How well is their rhythmic accuracy? How well is their pitch accuracy? What is their style like? If they played something, say, a little too fast, could they play it slower? If we ask them to make some kind of stylistic change, are they able to do that so that we can hear it and notice it? So based on those, we will figure out, the committee figures out who will go to the finals round. That is not behind a screen, that's in front of a very large committee, usually made up of the director, the assistant director, our command master chief, who is our top enlisted person. It's an E9 position. And then if it's a woodwind audition, all of the woodwind section leaders. If it's a brass, all the brass section leaders. It can be a committee up to maybe up to 10 people listening, and that part is usually about 30 to 40 minutes long because they're asking, it's very demanding. They're asking a lot of musical things. We're really grilling them. After that, there's sight reading. Sight reading is a very important part of our job. What that means is that you are able to take a piece of music and read it pretty perfectly as you see it. Everything that's notated on the page. We are called upon to do that very often. And then the last part of the audition is playing in an ensemble. So if they're auditioning for, say, clarinet, maybe it's with their woodwind quintet. How do they sound with the other woodwind players? Can they move with the other woodwind players? Can they follow what they're doing? So we really put them through the ringer. Mm-hmm. Then the last part of the audition, of course, is the interview.
How much does personality weigh in, or the fact that somebody's a team player, or perhaps not? Or is it primarily skill with the instrument that one plays?
That's a great question, and it's definitely something that we take into consideration, especially our director, Lieutenant Commander Williamson. That is absolutely one of the things that he's looking for in the audition, because this is a 4-year commitment. When somebody is offered the job, they're saying, yes, I will work for the Coast Guard for 4 years, and that's your enlistment. You can't get out of that. So we really are trying to find the best fit musically, but personally also make sure that the personality is going to match up.
Mm-hmm. Now let's take a step back to as a younger girl, and you're learning to play the instrument. Did you play any other instruments growing up, or you've always been a horn player / French horn player?
I actually started on violin when I was age 3, and that was because I watched Sesame Street and I fell in love with Isaac Perlman, and I thought he was the greatest. So my dad got me a little half-size violin, and he taped off the frets for me and taught me to play violin. And when I got old enough, I took some private lessons, and I did that till I was about 10. I did horn and violin pretty much side by side, and then I decided I liked horn better and stopped playing violin. So I don't think I remember any of the violin anymore.
Oh, really? I had the privilege of seeing Isaac Perlman play at the Guard.
Oh, fantastic.
That was a number of years ago. The local regional Rotary clubs brought him in as a big fundraising event, and I forget what they were raising the money for, but it was a packed house, and it was an extraordinary experience to be able to see him right here in little old New London.
Yeah. I did have to take piano lessons as part of my music performance degree at Ithaca. So I took a piano class for a year, and then I took private lessons for a year. And I was good enough to sort of accompany easier pieces with some of my classmates, but that I haven't really played piano since then.
Now, at what point did you recognize yourself or reinforcement from your instructors that you, in fact, were good enough to do this, to go to school for this performance, undergraduate, and to continue on at the graduate level and make a living at it at this level? Were you in high school, or did this skill level attain, somewhere, after that?
I would say probably in high school is when I knew that's what I was going to do. I don't think one ever knows whether or not they're good enough to do it until you get into schools. And then I don't know if anyone knows that they're good enough until they win an audition or they're out playing in the field. For me, it felt kind of like a natural progression. I felt like I was always geared to do that. I don't know if groomed is the right word, but I'd always been preparing to do that. So it seems kind of natural. I think probably at some point I'd try to rebel against it a little bit, maybe like most high school kids do. But it seemed like a natural calling. It seemed like a natural fit. And I think that my success especially in grad school and then in winning the Coast Guard Band audition sort of was the fruit of the labor. That's what I was meant to do.
Now, at the level you perform at now, do you practice or do you just perform? How does that work?
Right. So do
you go to your room and play?
Right, I do. For me personally, and I think this is true for a lot of my colleagues, and I want to speak for all of them, for most of us, we have a daily routine that we do to kind of maintain what we're doing. Then there's always that thirst of knowledge of learning something new or doing something different than we haven't done. Our band repertoire is often very challenging, and so there are many things that I need to practice for that. I also play in the brass quintet, and oftentimes there are things I need to practice for that. So yes, for every concert that we're doing, every performance, there's the daily maintenance. If it's a repeat of a piece that I've already played, I'm looking through it again, especially for technical passages, trying to improve on my last performance. There's always something to be practicing. And then on the off times, I'm pulling out fun things that I want to play. Like maybe I want to learn a Bach cello suite and transcribe it for horn, and so that would be a fun thing to do. I certainly try to play along with my students every once in a while and do duets with them. So there's always opportunity for more practice and certainly honing my craft and getting better at what I do.
Now, when the band performs, how long do you take preparing for that concert? Is it weeks, months, days, or do you show up and because you're all pros and you can read music and the maestro goes and away you go?
So I'll go from the big picture to the small picture. So the big picture first is that the director needs to come up with the program. So he is listening to lots and lots of music, and he's forming an idea of a theme in his head and looking for pieces of music that are going to fit in that theme. He's going to look for pieces that will feature members of the band as soloists or maybe in small ensembles that will fit in with that theme. And from there, he will give that program to the librarian, who is going to look to see, do we own that music? And if we don't, how can he get that music? Are we renting it? Are we buying it? Does it need to be created? We have staff arrangers that can create arrangements for us. We also, both of those arrangers are very accomplished composers. So if it's a specially themed piece, it's possible the director will ask them to compose a piece, maybe 4 minutes long, that will fit in with this kind of theme. Once the librarian has ordered all the music and has gotten it in, we usually get our music about 3 weeks before performance, sometimes a month, depending on what's happening with our schedule. And then we'll go get our folders and start practicing, get ready. Usually about 1 week before the concert is when we start rehearsing all together. But the expectation is that everybody already knows their part and can play their part before we get on stage for the first time as a group. Otherwise, it would it would defeat the purpose of the first rehearsal.
And as a group of highly skilled professionals, have any of you had a piece of music that is beyond your capacity to play?
I would say no, that it's in all of our natures to make sure that we can play it. That challenge is accepted every time. And so we do what it takes for each of us individually to play that piece. I would say no, I have not seen that.
I'm just curious. I mean,
Yeah.
just everything just as a spectator, someone who enjoys listening. I mean, what goes into this? And you've been doing this now with the Coast Guard Band for almost 20 years.
Correct.
What changes have you seen? I mean, the band started, you noted at the top, in 1925.
That's right.
So it's getting close to 100 years.
We are very close.
And so what have you observed over your tenure? Because you've certainly done more than your 4 years.
That's
You
true.
must like what you're doing.
I do love what I'm doing. When I first got into the band, we were 45 members. And we were very fortunate in 2002 to be expanded to 55. That was unheard of for anybody to gain 10 billets the way that we did. Each of our positions in the Coast Guard are called billets. So to gain 10 billets and to grow to 55, the first thing that meant was that all of our parts were covered. So previously, we had 3 saxophones. We did not have a tenor saxophone. Usually there's a complement of 4, 2 altos, a tenor, and a bari. We had 2 altos and we had a bari, but no tenor saxophone. So now, with these extra 10 billets in 2002, we had a full complement of saxophones. We were able to add a harp. We were able to add another trumpet. We were able to add more percussion players. And the list goes on for 10 people, which is fantastic. So that was really the first big change that we've had. And then I would say, over the years, the quality of musicians that have been coming in just comes up higher every single time. The bar just keeps getting raised and raised. And so the actual performance level of the group is constantly being raised, which is very exciting because for those of us that have been in for longer, it's a great challenge for us to keep up with some of these newer kids that are coming in and are super, super talented and to learn from them.
And they're pushing the envelope.
They are, and it's fantastic. I love it.
Why a military band? It's a government job, government salary, as opposed to, let's say, in the private sector.
Sure.
What was the appeal, or was it just happened to be the first job that you had the opportunity to say yes?
Well, I'll talk about my colleagues first, and then I'll talk about me.
Sure.
For a lot of my colleagues, this was the first job that they won, or maybe this was not the first job they won, but they wanted a steady income. They wanted health insurance. They wanted benefits, and the Coast Guard certainly offers all of that. I think everybody knows that many private organizations, symphony orchestras, have been struggling. We see in the news about our colleagues that go on strike, that are dependent upon ticket sales, and that's not really true for a military job. So that's a plus for a military job. I would say the pay, the benefits, and the fact that you guaranteed that you have a job, which is fantastic. For me personally, my father being a musician, my father loved the Coast Guard Band, and I grew up listening to the Coast Guard Band, and I grew up listening to him saying, you know, one day you could be in the Coast Guard Band. And I sort of had forgotten about that until I was in grad school. I had 1 year left, and my teacher said, okay, well, you've been out, you know, subbing in different orchestras. You're going to be leaving. What do you think you'll be doing? Have you thought about a military band career? And I thought, oh yeah, my father told me about the Coast Guard Band once. And it just so happened after I had my first child that there was an opening. So of course I was going to take that audition, and I did, and it worked out for us, which was fantastic.
Now, how many horn players are there in the Coast Guard Band?
We have 5. Typically, a section has 4. That's what you usually see. And a really great organization will have 5. And what they do is that person assists on first, because the principal part is very taxing on the embouchure, on the chops. And so to help with that, we have that 5th player. It also helps if someone is sick or someone needs to, if I'm out with the brass quintet, that 5th person can come and play my part when I'm not there. So it's fantastic. And the 5 of us work really well together.
Fantastic. Now, noted in the introduction that you handle scheduling.
I do handle the scheduling.
So I do note that the Coast Guard Band appears to play regularly at Leamy Hall on campus, as well as pretty frequently in New London.
We do.
And I know that you also happen to expand your horizons and do get out and beyond Greater New London. So perhaps you can share with the audience where the band plays, maybe some of these areas where there's government issues that you have to do for formalities, and the travel that goes along with this, how that all works.
Great. So let's start with the local scheduling. So at the Academy, we do a concert once a month at Leamy Hall. They're free and open to everyone in the public. They're Sunday afternoons at 2 o'clock. We also play at Fort Trumbull Memorial Day weekend and Labor Day weekend. Occasionally we're able to get out into the community. Last summer we were at Yukon Avery Point, which is a fantastic concert. We also, 2 years ago, were part of the Sub-Century, and we did quite a few concerts in Groton to help celebrate that. We support a lot of the Academy events, especially during commencement week. The Academy Band is not available during that time because the cadets are out training or they're graduating, and they don't have the numbers, so that's something that we support. And we also support activities like the Cadet Musical it's actually going to be at the end of February this year. I believe they're doing Bye Bye Birdie. That's always a fun event. So we support things at the Academy. We play concerts at the Academy. We also do school concerts within the community. We have schools bus kids to us, and we go out into the schools to do that kind of outreach. In our local area, we do run out concerts. This past Monday, we were up at Glastonbury High School. We had given a performance up there, which is a great way to connect with a new audience. We thoroughly enjoy that.
How is something like that scheduled? I mean, do they contact you, or do you extend an offer that kind of goes out into the public at large or to schools, and they got chosen?
So they actually contacted me, and that's usually what happens is somebody has the idea or is suggested that they want to have the Coast Guard Band come into their community. So on our website, there is a link that says if you'd like a concert in your community, please contact Senior Chief Musician Heather Dowdy. So I'll get an email that says, we're interested in having a Coast Guard Band concert in our community. What does that take? So we communicate back and forth to see how that will work. One thing that's important to me when I'm scheduling those, of course, is our schedule. Did we have any concerts around there? So that facilitates with the programming. Does it fit in with everything that we're doing? How often have we been there, or have we never been there? And then something that people might not realize is that the size of the stage is actually really important. We are a 55-member band, and so we do require a certain amount of space on a stage, and so that is something that I have to take into consideration. So I usually go to the school to visit it, or venue to visit it, so I can see what it looks like and make sure that it's a good size for us. And then once it's scheduled, I pass it off to our operations team, and they work out the logistics to get us there, which is fantastic.
Now, if you're visiting a school, or if you've got students visiting you, do you have opportunity for any of the students to play with the Coast Guard Band?
We currently do not have that opportunity, and I know that's something that other organizations do have. It's not something that we are currently offering. It's not one that has fit into our schedule nicely, so that's been a little bit challenging. It doesn't mean that we won't ever do it. It just, right now, for our schedule, it hasn't quite fit in.
Now, you also visit other parts of the country.
We do.
And how is that scheduled? I mean, is it a random selection, or is the country divided into defined spaces and you work particular areas in a given year?
Right. So when we are not performing at home, we are either performing in the National Capital Region, or we are on our national tour. And we are currently looking at different Coast Guard districts that we haven't been to recently, and we're looking to connect with those communities, especially if they have a Coast Guard city. So that's one way that we plan our national tours. Our tour department tries to work 2 to 3 years out. It takes about a year to plan a national tour. A national tour can last up to 21 days for us, so that's a lot of work, a lot of coordination that goes into that. So our tour department is identifying really great venues, maybe in places that we have not played in before, maybe in some that we have played in before that are successful, and getting a good mix of cities, and basically making a really thoughtful map of where we can travel that makes sense and logistically we can get to from every day. So basically, we're waking up, we're getting on a bus, we're traveling, and then we set up for the concert, play the concert, leave, next morning get on the bus, do it again someplace else. So we have to make sure that logistically that all works out.
Now, as a scheduler, the logistics are not your detail, or are
Correct. No, my job is basically first to take a request, make sure that it fits with the mission of the band, that it fits in with our schedule. And then some of the other criteria, like I said, do we fit in that space? What's the purpose of the event that we're asked to support? All of that kind of stuff. And then I hand off to our logistics people to do that.
I think that's got to be pretty challenging to move that many people, and it's always by bus, or do you fly?
We fly commercially if we need to an event. So I'll give you an example of last year. We did a tour from Texas up through Kansas City, Missouri. So we did fly into San Antonio. That's where we began the tour, and then we bussed that entire tour and then flew home from Kansas City.
Okay. How many stops were on that tour, just out of curiosity, if you recall?
That one, I believe, was 10 days, if I remember. Several places in Texas, a couple places in Oklahoma, and then a couple places in Kansas, and then ended in Kansas City.
So were there any Coast Guard cities in Kansas?
There were not. However, we did have the opportunity to play in Topeka, Kansas, and most people would not know that Topeka, Kansas, we actually have a Coast Guard center there. That is our pay center. So that's a very important place for all of us to know about, because that's where all of our paychecks come from. But also when we have completed our travel, we have to submit a voucher to be reimbursed for the funds, and that goes to Topeka also. So that was great to get to see where our Topeka, Kansas pay center is.
Now, when you're traveling like that, is the entire group stay in the same lodging, and do you dine at the same time, or you guys, you're kind of on your own? I mean, if somebody wants to stay at a 5-star and somebody wants to stay at Motel 6, that they have that choice, or do you all are in the same place, having the same meals?
We have 2 people in our tours department. One is figuring out where we're going to play, and the other person is figuring out where we're going to stay. And so we do all stay in the same place. It's usually a hotel, and yep, she plans where our hotel stays are. We do not all eat together unless if we want to, unless if a meal is provided for us. But in general, you're on your own once you get to the hotel. She's very strategic in finding hotel locations where there are a lot of great restaurants or grocery stores nearby, so people have options, especially to accommodate different eating, such as vegetarianism or veganism. So we do all stay together, we bus together, we fly together, but we can eat on our own.
And also, I'm just trying to, you mentioned again at the top, you were very thorough, and the public relations aspect of your job. When you're traveling on these national tours, I don't know if it's a direct relationship or indirect in terms of recruiting. That maybe somebody may say, you know something, I want to go to the academy, or maybe I'd like to do the Coast Guard, because I've seen some other clips and it looks like a really fun thing to do, or it's exciting, or they have challenging jobs that the Coast Guard is involved with.
Right, and so part of our job when we go on the road is recruiting for the Coast Guard. So from the stage, our announcer, who's usually our assistant director, Chief Warrant Officer Rick Wyman, he will definitely talk about that, talk about the types of missions that we do in the Coast Guard. In addition, we do invite local recruiters to come to the concerts and set up a table and be available to answer questions, be available to speak with people that are interested in careers in the Coast Guard. That's a regular thing that we do for all of our tours.
And that's a given. I mean, you won't perform if you cannot do that.
Correct.
So the folks that have brought you in know that ahead of time.
Yes.
This is part of the deal here, that not just a concert, but there's going to be an effort to encourage folks to give
Absolutely.
the Coast Guard
They do know that.
consideration.
Yes.
Now, the scheduling I'm finding fascinating. Now, how many requests are there for the services of the Coast Guard Band?
That's a good question. I'm not really sure that I've actually counted them. I would say on average, I probably get between 5 or 6 a week.
A week.
A week. I have not counted that, but it's usually about 5 or 6 a week.
And let's say, now what's the process to decide whether to accept? Let's start there.
Well, my number one is to look at the Coast Guard mission. Does it fit what our mission is? And so our mission is to support the Coast Guard and to promote goodwill and to play for the American people. So I make sure that whatever we're being asked to do fits that. In addition,
Does that have a problem from time to time?
I wouldn't say that it's a problem. I just want to make sure that it fits in there.
Okay.
The second thing is that I'm looking at a U.S. code that it's actually, I think it's U.S. Code 31, Section 974 or something like that, that talks about the roles of military musicians, what we can and can't do. For example, we're not allowed to play for fundraisers. Everything that we play has to be free and open to the public. So those are kinds of legal things that I have to be able to check off before we can accept a gig, a concert, an event. So
I got your drift.
So I'm looking at those kinds of things. And of course, I'm looking at the balance of the schedule. Because we're 55 people, because of the types of events that we have, I sort of have a hierarchy of priorities that I need to fit. Plus, I have to allow for appropriate time off for people. So I'm sure that I could fill up our schedule 7 days a week with 2 events every single day, but that would not be healthy for our employees. So I'm really looking to balance the schedule and make sure that everything we do fits in with the mission, fits in with the U.S. code, and is going to be a great PR opportunity for the Coast Guard and a way to showcase our talents, but also showcase what a great organization the Coast Guard is and what we do for the American people.
Mm-hmm. Now, is there any responsibilities from an organization that asks to have the Coast Guard Band perform? I mean, whether it's transportation expenses or meals or accommodations or any of that kind of stuff?
Sure. So
Excuse me.
we would love to have a budget like the Department of Defense, but as you mentioned, we're the Department of Homeland Security, and we have a different budget. And so our budget allows for us to go on our national tour, and it allows for us to have operational funds. It's not really robust enough for us to pay for, say, a concert at Glastonbury High School. So we're dependent upon our hosts to sponsor that travel. And so what happens is I'll come up with a cost estimate to let them know how much a coach bus will be, how much an equipment truck will be, and if they're able to fund that, we run that request through our legal office so that they can vet it and also draw up a gift acceptance for that. So it's a partnership between the Coast Guard and the host for hosting a concert, and we are very grateful for all of our community members that are hosts for our concerts and bringing us into their communities so that we can give them an excellent concert and also, share what the Coast Guard does.
Now, one thing that I've had the privilege and pleasure of enjoying is the jazz band, and you've got other, for lack of better words, subsets of the Coast Guard band of your musicians do other things in smaller groups.
We do. So when we're not playing in the full band, we have many small groups. We have the brass quintet, we have the woodwind quintet, we have the Dixieland band, we have the Guardians big band, we have a clarinet quartet, a saxophone quartet, we have a flute and harp duo, we have a jazz combo. Sometimes our harpist will go out on her own, and we have a woodwind trio, and we have a newly created saxophone and harp duo, which they are actually performing this coming Sunday, Super Bowl Sunday, at 2 o'clock at the Noank Baptist Church. And so that's going to be their first recital. They'll be having another recital a little bit later in February over at Stone Ridge and Mystic. And I think they definitely are doing a school program in Groton, maybe at the end of this week. So that's exciting to have a new group out in the public performing. But yes, we break into smaller groups to do different kinds of things, and then we all come back together again to be the full band.
Who handles their scheduling?
I do.
All of them?
I do, yep. I handle all of the scheduling. If it's at the Academy, I do have somebody that works with me. He's a percussionist. His name is musician First Class Chris Smith, and he helps me with the scheduling on the daily basis and also at the Academy level. Anything that is outside of the Academy, I handle. So it's great to have help.
So when we have these smaller groups playing, let's say in downtown New London on the waterfront park.
Yes, at Waterfront Park. That is the Dixie group usually.
Yes.
And that is something that Neff Productions usually requests from me, and then I set it up and we make that happen. Schedule allowed. Sometimes I can't. Sometimes I can't make it happen.
But it's a lot of fun, I must say. It's Cedric Mayfield's a terrific performer. He's got a little bit of
first-class musician. Cedric Mayfield is an excellent jazz musician. Something you might not have known is that he was in the Air Force Band before he came to us, and he was actually stationed in Germany when he won our audition. So he moved his family here to join our band, and we are very, very lucky to have him.
Yeah, he's fun. He's got a little bit of personality in uniform there.
He does, and he is just a fantastic musician and a fantastic human.
And one thing I might add, that when they're playing on the waterfront, that there's a lot of traffic between the boats and the horns and the trains and the whistles, and the pros don't let this stuff bother them. Where others may be looking around or stop, and they do what they have to do.
That's right.
They're on
the show
point.
Goes on. That's right.
So it's an interesting dynamic in that particular environment.
Yes.
Well, folks, you're watching City Focus, and I'm Marty Olson, your host, and I'm joined tonight by Heather Dowdy, who's a member of the Coast Guard Band. And I don't know about you, but I'm just thoroughly enjoying this interview. And if you'd like to contribute or participate, please give us a call. We've got another 10 minutes left or so at 860-440-3154. Or if you're out of the local calling area, please call 800-253-2285. In your travels around the country and around the world, is there any place or places that have really drawn, that you'd like to go back to, or you've really enjoyed, and you're having the opportunity to see the area, and you're just not going from hotel to bus to venue and motoring along in that fashion?
Right. I think one of my favorite concerts was a concert that we did at the base of Mount Rushmore. They have an amphitheater there, and that was a really remarkable concert, very fun, in such a beautiful setting. I definitely would like to go back there and play there again. I think that playing in Honolulu, in the Bowl Theater that's there, that was really, really spectacular. I don't think I have the name of the venue correct. It might be the Waikiki Theater. I'm not remembering the name of it, but it was a really nice amphitheater in Honolulu.
And that's outdoors.
It's outdoors. That
Do
would
you
be
prefer
fantastic.
playing outdoors?
I don't think I have a preference. If it's a nice hall, then I like playing there. There's a hall that we played at in Kansas City. It's our second time playing there. If I could play there again, that would be fantastic. It's really beautiful.
Yeah. Have you played Carnegie Hall?
We have played Carnegie Hall, yes. We did a chamber concert there in one of the smaller recital halls, and then we did play on the big stage, which was fantastic.
It's exciting stuff. Have you played Red Rocks in Colorado?
I have not personally played Red Rocks in Colorado, but we have played in the large theater that's in downtown Denver where the Denver Symphony plays.
Okay.
And that was, if I remember correctly, that is a venue where everybody's in the round. So people were behind us and in front of us all around. That was really special. Beautiful hall.
How about Symphony Hall in Boston?
I played Symphony Hall when I was a kid. I have not played Symphony Hall with a band, but that would be a great venue for us to get to someday. I'll have to put it on our dream list.
Right to Mr. Lockhart there. And
That's
see.
right.
Now, you've mentioned to me offline when we were preparing for tonight's show that the band has certain responsibilities, such as when a president dies, that the band has a certain thing that they're supposed to do, or maybe it's at an inauguration. There's certain government protocols that you're involved with. Maybe you could share
Sure.
what those are and what you do at these events.
So for an inaugural for a president, we definitely march in the parade. We are the lead of the 5th Division. So what that means for the viewers is when it's starting to get dark and when the people are going home and get to the 5th Division, that's when we're starting off. We're a little bit later, but we do lead off that 5th Division, which is a great honor for us. We have also been able to send our brass quintet to play first honors for the newly elected president and vice president. So right after the actual inaugural and after the speech, the president and vice president go in to sign some papers, and then they walk in for the luncheon, and that first honors for the last 3 inaugurals has been performed by our brass quintet, which is a great honor. And then oftentimes we're assigned to one of the balls to support one of the balls, which is also great. On the other side, on the state funeral side, our role is to stand and perform as the casket goes into the National Cathedral and out of the National Cathedral. Because we're a small group, and because we need to travel to get down to Washington, D.C., that is a really great role for us, because that's a smaller space. But in addition, it allows our members a couple of days of time to get things together to travel down to D.C. So that's our role there. Our vocalist will sing in any of the all military vocal choirs. That's often usually in the chapel.
Okay. Now, mentioning being here based in New London, the other service bands are in Washington. Is that correct?
That is correct. The premier service bands.
Premier service bands.
Yes.
I mean, from time to time, there's articles in the paper that they're casting a line out to reel the Coast Guard band in and bring them to Washington. Do you ever see that happening?
I have seen that happen. I was not in the area when this happened back in the early 80s, but that was certainly something that was talked about when I got into the band. There was an effort maybe about 8 or 10 years ago, and then more recently there was an effort that I think that you know more about. That is probably always on the dream list of our Commandant. The Commandant is the top person of the Coast Guard. We are a premier service band. We're up here in New London. We're not necessarily servicing headquarters the same as the other bands are, but we do make a great effort to go down and make sure that we are performing for headquarters events. I think it's always going to be a topic of discussion, and hopefully, you know, it gets resolved at some point to whichever way it's going to be resolved. But right now, primarily, there isn't a facility for us down there, and we are trying to do the best we can to be versatile and to service the entire Coast Guard from our home base here at the Academy.
Yeah, I must say, though, that times I wonder if New London realizes how fortunate we are to have the United States Coast Guard Band home base right here in New London at the Academy.
Well, I can tell you from my perspective, being on stage, that we feel loved by the New London community.
Wow.
They come out to the concerts, they are very appreciative of what we do, and certainly it shows with their applause at our concerts, and it's great, especially Memorial Day weekend and Labor Day weekend, to see thousands of people on the lawns at Fort Trumbull to come see us play. That's fantastic.
Yeah. Now, you've played in two different locations at the fort. You've been down kind of overlooking the pier, kind of
Yes.
on a hillier space, and then last fall you were overlooking the river with the lighthouse behind you.
That's true. So the story behind that is when we first started performing at Fort Trumbull, that was a really nice looking little amphitheater spot. And over the years, those trees have grown quite a bit. And so their leaves were sort of encroaching in our music and our ability to stand. And so in planning that concert, I was talking with Park Supervisor Henry Alves, and he suggested that maybe we try the South Lawn and see how that would work. So we also looked at the availability for all of our guests to safely walk over to be able to see the concert. So Park Supervisor Alves and I said, let's try this out on the South Lawn, and I think that it's better. It's different, but I think it's better. I think it's safer for people when they're trying to sit and watch us, and the trees are not in our way.
Well, I think both make for a nice place for one to watch and listen and enjoy.
I agree.
That's for sure. Folks, we're down to our last minute, and the hour just whips by here. Is there anything that I haven't touched on that you'd like to share in our remaining moments?
Well, I think I'd like to invite everybody to come to our concert on February 11th. It'll be at the Academy. It's a full band concert. I'm sure that you will hear our vocal soloist, Megan Weichlinget, first class Megan Weichlinget, sing. She has a fantastic voice, and I'm sure it'll be an enjoyable program. So that'll be February 11th at 2 p.m. And you can check out our website to see when future performances are, and certainly like us on Facebook and see some of our videos. There's a very popular Doc Severinsen video with our Guardians Big Band that's on YouTube that people really enjoy. I think it's garnered thousands of hits, which is great, thousands of views.
Do you have CDs that are for sale?
We do not have CDs for sale. We actually hand them out. So anybody that would like one can request a CD, and so they can go onto our website and request a CD, and one will be mailed to them.
Terrific. Well, we're going into fade mode. Heather, I want to thank you so much for appearing today. You've been terrific.
Thank you.
And,
Thanks for having me, Mr. Olson.
It's been marvelous, and we'll have you back sometime.